Leaders in any organization, whether it's a small team or a large global enterprise, know at a certain point that decisions don't happen in a linear fashion. It's not simply a matter of someone at the executive level saying we should do X, and that cascades down to a subordinate, to another subordinate, down to a team, and gets executed, right? It sounds good on paper, but we all know that in reality there are countless injects at every layer where other teams are offering input, reaching across boundaries and updating, saying, oh, here's something new we learned in the market, here's a person that should be in your team. So there's a constant series of changes to any one plan that's cascaded from the top of the organization. And that can be a very healthy process. So it's not simply a matter of senior leaders making a decision. It goes into some sort of execution timeline, et cetera, project managed, and then you as leaders wait to see the impact of your brilliant decision from the top. It's much more complex than that. And especially in the run-up to implementing a decision and during the project management phase, that's when these other injects are constantly taking place, some of which are critical to guarantee as close as possible success of that effort, or to warn against it. There are new risks that are appearing in the environment. But there comes a certain point where you can't have too many just bright ideas showing up, or you're going to derail the likelihood of success as you get closer and closer to seeing the impact of that decision. And so a simple rule that we like to think about is the relationship between what we call phase 1 and phase 2 decision making. In phase 1, I have declared to the organization, or we as a senior leadership team have said, here's where we want to go in the next quarter, the next 6 months, et cetera. And now let's start planning around that. We believe that leaders need to be very clear with their organization, especially in a remote environment where we're all connected digitally, to say that very clearly. We are in phase 1 of this decision. And by phase 1, we are saying to the organization, we want these injects. Tell us what you're seeing in the environment, identify risks, opportunities, help us adjust this plan as we go along. Then, at a certain point, you're close enough to execution where you have to align all your assets and start driving forward. And that's the point at which additional injects can confuse, derail, or slow down the initial decision that you made days ago, weeks ago, perhaps months ago. And so there again, we believe leaders need to be very clear and say, okay, in a broad communication, if it's a critical strategic decision, we are now entering phase 2 of this decision. And by phase 2, what we're saying is very clearly, if you have any other insights, ideas, et cetera, from the environment, from your team, from your past experiences, that would suggest that this decision is not a good one, you need to let us know right now. Because when we enter this final phase of execution, we are now looking for the impact of that decision. And we might hear your input, but it's going to be too late to readjust this plan. So the clarity of language from leaders, especially at those strategic level decisions that you're making on a regular basis, clarifying with your team, we're at phase 1, we want your input, we need your ground truth from the environment, versus phase 2, where beyond this point, there's no turning back. So if you have anything left to say, tell us now, otherwise it will be too late. That clarity of language can be a critical asset for leaders to put into their language and how they communicate with the organization.